What's up guys, welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create an email newsletter generator by creating a simple workflow in Anychan. Let's get started. To get started, in Anychan, I've created a workflow that I've renamed to email newsletter generator. And here, we're going to start by adding a trigger. I'm going to choose an on-form submission trigger. And here, we're going to add the title, description, and elements to our form. I've gone ahead and added the title, description, and elements to our form. So the form title is on the lines of newsletter generator submission form. The description of our form is on the lines of fill out this form to generate a complete, polished newsletter. The form elements, the first field name is on the lines of what is the main topic of your newsletter. Element type, we're choosing text. This field will be required. The other field name is on the lines of what is the target audience for this newsletter. Element, we're choosing a drop down and adding these options over here. So the options are SaaS founders, growth teams, advanced experts, or business owners. This field will also be required. The other field name is on the lines of what is the primary objective for this newsletter. Element type, we're choosing a drop down and adding these options over here. So the options are educate, promote, nurture leads, or update. The other field name is on the lines of what tone would you like the newsletter to use. Element type, we're choosing a drop down and adding these options over here. So the options are professional, conversational, friendly, and authoritative. The other field name is on the lines of what sections would you like to include in your newsletter. Element type, we're choosing a drop down and adding these options over here. So the options are case study, promotional blog, resources, tips, and main story. The other field name is on the lines of call to action would you like at the end. Element type, we're choosing a drop down and adding these options right here. Options are book a call, visit website, or join a newsletter. And the last field name is on the lines of what is the best email address to send your newsletter. Element type, we're choosing email. And here, I'll click on execute step to fill out our form. And here's the title, description, and elements to our form. So I'm going to start by adding the main topic of our newsletter. So the topic will be the latest strategies for improving customer retention. Target audience, we're going to choose SaaS founders. Primary objective, can say we'd like to educate. Tone, we're going to use a professional tone or an authoritative tone. The section we'd like to include, can say we'd like to include a main story. Call to action, can say join a newsletter. You're going to add the email address we'd like to send our newsletter to. And here click on submit our form. Can see our form was submitted successfully. Now, in our trigger, here you can see we successfully captured our data that we just filled in our form. Captured the main topic, target audience, primary objective, tone section, call to action, and the email address right here. So here, I'll pin this data and use this data to set up our workflow. So the next thing that we're going to do here is I'm going to wait a few seconds. So I'll search for the wait node over here and click on it. Can wait, let's say 5 seconds. Here, I'll execute this node over here. You can see that our node was executed successfully. Here, rename this node to wait 5 seconds. Then I'll click on rename right here. The next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to set the fields for form submissions. So I'll search for the set node right here and click on it. You're going to set the fields for these submission data right here. So we're going to start with the main topic and the target audience and the primary objective. And I'm going to set the field for the tone and sections and call to action, the email address, and here I'll click on execute step to set the fields. You can see our node was executed successfully. You can rename this node to set form submission fields. And then here I'll click on rename. The next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to add the condition. To add the condition, I'm going to choose the if node right here and click on it. Here, the condition that we're going to add is that the main topic has to exist. The other condition that we're going to add is the target audience has to also exist. And lastly, the primary objective also has to exist. So if all our fields exist, we'd like to proceed with our workflow. So I'll click on execute step right here. You can see our output was in the true branch. If output was in the false branch, we'd like to do nothing. So I'll search for the do nothing node right here and click on it. So since our output was in the true branch, we're going to proceed with our workflow. So here, I'll wait a few seconds. So I'll search for the wait node right here. Can wait, let's say 3 seconds. I'll name this node to wait 3 seconds. Then I'll click on rename right here. And I'll execute this node over here. Now we can proceed and generate the outline of our newsletter. To do that, we're going to use an AI tool. So in AI, I'll click on OpenAI right here and click on message model. Here, you'll need to create your credential to connect your account to Anychan. So from your OpenAI API, add the API key over here and click on save to create your credential. Close this window and here choose a model. You can choose any of these models over here. I'm going to choose GPT 4.1 mini. And then here I'll proceed to add the prompt for the system role and the user role over here. The prompt for our system role could be in the lens of you're an AI agent responsible for generating a complete newsletter outline. And the prompt for the user role is on the lines of your goal is to take the user submitted information and produce a clear structured outline that guides the writing process. And here we are mapping the data that we just submitted via form. So we are mapping the newsletter topic, target audience, primary objective, tone, selected sections, and the call to action. Then we're telling the tool to generate several strong title ideas based on the topic, audience, and objective. Then create a compelling intro hook that aligns with the chosen tone. Then build a full section structure using the sections selected by the user. Add helpful bullet points under each section that guides the content direction. And then maintain clarity, alignment with the objective, and relevance to the audience. So for the output, we like to output the title idea, intro hook, and the structured outline. Then we're telling the tool to return only the outline in clean text with no explanation. So here, I'll click on execute step here to generate an outline of our newsletter. You can see it's executing our node right here. Let's give it a second. Our node was executed successfully. And here you can see we generated the outline for our newsletter. So here we have the title ideas. Also generated an introduction, an intro hook, main story over here, and the call to action over here. This is incredible. So I renamed this now to outline generator, and I'll click on rename right here. Now, the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to proceed and generate our newsletter. To generate our newsletter, we're going to use an AI agent. So in AI, I'll click on AI agent over here. I'm going to choose to define below and add our prompt and our system message over here. The prompt for our system message is on the lines of you're an AI agent responsible for generating a complete newsletter using the outline and user submitted form data. Then the system message is on the lines of your job is to expand research, write full draft, refine it, and format it into a final ready to publish newsletter. And here we're mapping the newsletter topic, target audience, primary objective, tone, selected sections, call to actions, and the outline that we generated using our outline generator node over here. So you can see the title ideas, intro hook, structured outline, and the call to action sections over here. Step 1 is the research and insight expansion. We're telling the agent to expand on each outline section using the best practices in the topic, provide helpful insights and deeper explanation for each part, then suggest examples or case studies where relevant, then add supporting data and statistics where appropriate. Then the output will be a research note by section. Then step 2 is the newsletter draft writer, where we're telling the agent to write a clear, engaging introduction, then expand every section into full paragraphs using the outline and research notes, then insert insights, examples, and data naturally, then maintain the selected tone throughout the newsletter, add smooth transition between sections, and end with the provided call to action. Then here, the output will be a full newsletter draft. Step 3 will be editing and refinement, where we like the agent to fix repetitive or unclear wording, then improve flow and overall clarity, strengthen messaging, and maintain a consistent brand voice and tone. Output will be a refined newsletter. Step 4 will be formatting, where we like the agent to add headings for each section, add spacing and line breaks, add bullet points where useful, add bold where appropriate, and prepare everything for email or document export. The output will be a formatted newsletter. Step 5 will be final assembly. We would like the agent to combine all formatted content into one cohesive output, include the call to action at the end, remove any system nodes or internal instructions. The output will be a final newsletter ready for Google Docs. Then we're telling the agent to return only the final text for each output section in clean format. Here I'm going to require a specific output format, and then I'll click on the output parser here. Then I'll click on structured output parser, and here we're going to add our JSON example. So this is a JSON example of output. So we like to output the subject line and the body of the newsletter over here. Here, I'll drag this node at the top over here. Also going to add a memory. I'm going to choose a simple memory over here. And here I'll choose to define below and add the key over here. So we can add any key. I'm going to choose to add today's date as a key over here and drag this node at the top. The other thing that we're going to add is a chat model. I'm going to choose an OpenAI chat model over here. We're going to choose our credential and our model over here. Then I'll drag this node at the top over here. I'll open this node over here and click on execute workflow to generate our newsletter. You can see it's executing our node. Let's give it a second for it to complete generating our newsletter. You can see that our node was executed successfully. Here we generated the subject line and the body of the newsletter over here. It's a comprehensive newsletter. I love it. With all the sections we outlined on our prompts. This is incredible. So now to preview our newsletter, we're going to add it into a Google Docs. So here, since our agent works perfectly, I rename it to email newsletter generator and click on rename right here. Now, to add our newsletter to our spreadsheet, we're going to start by setting the fields for the subject line and the email body. So to do that, I'll search for the set node right here. And here we're going to map the subject line and the newsletter over here. So there's a email body. And then I'll click on execute separate here to set the fields. You can see our node was executed successfully. And we set the fields over here for the newsletter. So I'll rename this node to set newsletter fields. And click on rename right here. Now we can proceed and add our newsletter to a Google Doc so we can preview it. To do that, I'll search for Google Docs right here and click on Google Docs. And here I'll click on create a document to create our document. Here, we're going to start by creating a new credential to connect our account to Anytime. So from your Google API, add your client ID and client secret right here. Sign in with your Google account and choose the account that you'd like to connect to Anytime. And your connection will be created. Then here, I'll close this window. And here we're going to find the folder that we would like to store our document. I'm going to choose my folder right here. And here we can map subject line as the title. Then I'll click on execute separate here to create our document. Here I rename this node to create a newsletter document. Then I'll click on rename right here. Now, the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to update this document with the newsletter that we generated using our agent. So I'll search for Google Docs again and click on Google Docs. Here I'll click on update document node. And then here we're going to map our document ID, which is this ID over here. We're also going to map the newsletter body over here. So I'll map the newsletter over here. And then I'll click on execute step right here. You can see we updated our document with the newsletter. Here I rename this now to update a newsletter document. And click on the name right here. The next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to send ourselves the newsletter document URL via email. So here I'll search for Gmail and click on Gmail right here. And here I'll click on send a message node. Here we're going to start by creating a new credential to connect our account to Anytime. So to do that, just click on sign in with Google over here. And then on the new window that pops up, choose the account that you'd like to connect to Anytime. And your connection will be created. Here I'm going to close this window. Then we're going to add our email address over here. Then we're going to proceed and add the subject line and the email body over here. So the subject line is on the lines of your latest newsletter is ready. Email type, we're going to choose text. We're going to add our email body. So the message of our email could be on the lines of, what's up? I'm excited to share your completed newsletter on, and then here we're mapping our topic. You can review and download the full newsletter using the link below. And here we are adding the link to our document and mapping the ID of our document over here. Here we're adding the link to our document by mapping the document ID over here. The newsletter is fully polished, formatted, and includes actionable insights, examples, and clear call to action. Please take a look and let me know if you have any feedback or if you'd like any adjustments. I'm happy to make edits to ensure it perfectly fits your needs. Looking forward to your thoughts. Best regards, email newsletter generator. Here I'll click on add options. Then I'll click on the append intent attribution. Then I'll turn these two off. And then I'll click on execute step right here. You can see our node was executed successfully, and we sent ourselves an email with the newsletter document URL. So here I'll rename this to send a newsletter document and click on the name right here. Now the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to add the form submission data, the newsletter, and the newsletter document URL to a spreadsheet. In Google Sheets, I've created a spreadsheet that I've renamed to email newsletter spreadsheet. In the spreadsheet, I've created a sheet that I've renamed to newsletter sheet. And here's where we're going to add the data from our workflow. We're going to add our main topic, target audience, primary objective, tone, sections, call to action, the actual newsletter that we generated using our agent, and the newsletter document URL. So to add our data to our spreadsheet over here, in our workflow, I'll search for Google Sheets and click on Google Sheets. Here I'll click on append row in sheet node. And here, we're also going to create a new credential to connect your account to Anytime by signing in with the Google account over here. And then on the new window that pops up, choose the account that you'd like to connect to Anytime, and your connection will be created. Since I have already done that, I'm going to close this window right here. Here we're going to find our document, which is this document right here. We're also going to find our sheet, which is this sheet right here. And then here, we're going to map values to our columns in our spreadsheet with the data from our workflow. So for the main topic, we're going to map it over here, same with the target audience, primary objective, tone, sections, call to action, Then for the email newsletter, we're going to map it from this node over here. And lastly, here we're going to add the email newsletter document URL. To get the document URL, we're going to grab it from Gmail, the Gmail node over here. Here I'll expand this node and copy this link over here. And then I'll go back to our spreadsheet. And here I'll click on expression over here and expand it and paste our link over here. Then here I'll map the ID of our document, which is this ID over here. And then I'll click on execute separate here to add our data to our spreadsheet. You can see our node was executed successfully. And here we successfully added our data to our spreadsheet. So here I renamed this node to email newsletter. I'll click on rename right here. And then the last thing that we're going to do here is we're going to complete our workflow. So I'll search for the do nothing node right here and click on it. And here I'll execute this node right here to complete our workflow. Our node was executed successfully. Now, when I open our spreadsheet, here you can see we successfully added our data over here. So we added the main topic, target audience, primary objective, the tone, sections, call to action, the email newsletter that we generated using our workflow, and the email newsletter document URL over here. So we can open this document and preview it. When I open Google Docs, you can see the subject line and the email body of our newsletter over here. So this is an incredible newsletter that we generated using our main topic over here with all these different sections over here. So we have the call to action section, case study section, incredible introduction, and more about our topic over here. So this is incredible. We proceeded to send ourselves the newsletter via email. So the email, here is the subject line and the email body of the email that we're using to send ourselves the newsletter document URL. And here's the link to the newsletter document. This is document with our newsletter that we generated using our workflow over here. So we generated this newsletter, sent ourselves the newsletter via email, and added the newsletter to our spreadsheet over here using this workflow that we created over here in Anytime. So our workflow works perfectly. So we are triggering our workflow, filling out our form, the topic, and target audience I would like to generate our newsletter for. And here we are setting the fields for the form submissions. And then we are proceeding to generate an outline for our newsletter using this node right here. And then we're using the form submission data and the outline that we generated using this node right here to generate our newsletter with this AI agent. And then we're setting the fields for the newsletter using this node. And then we are creating a newsletter document using this node right here. And then we are proceeding to update the document with the newsletter that we created right here. And we're proceeding to send ourselves the newsletter document URL via email, then adding the form submission data, the newsletter, and the newsletter document URL to our spreadsheet using this node over here. As you can see over here, we're adding the main topic, target audience, primary objective, the tone, section, call to action, the actual email newsletter, and the email newsletter document URL over here, which is the URL to this incredible newsletter that we generated using our workflow here. Now we can try testing our workflow to see how it works. Test our workflow. I'll unpin this data to fill out our form again with a new topic that we're going to use to generate our newsletter. To fill out our form, I'll click on execute workflow over here. Here we're going to add our main topic. Our main topic in this time around is going to be best practices for hybrid team collaboration. Target audience, we're going to choose growth teams. Primary objective, we're going to choose to educate. The tone, we're going to choose professional tone. Sections, we'd like to include main story. Call to action, we're going to choose to join newsletter. And then here we're going to add our email address. So we're going to use to send our newsletter. And then here click on submit our form. You can see our form was submitted successfully. Here, you can see that our workflow was executed successfully. So, to get our workflow after filling out our form with this data right here, where we capture the main topic, target audience, primary objective, the tone, sections, call to action, and the emails that we're using to send the newsletter. Then we are proceeding to set the fields for the form submission. Then we're waiting a few seconds and then generating an outline of our newsletter using this node right here. Then using the form submission data and the outline, we are generating our newsletter using this AI agent. Then we are setting the fields for the newsletter and then creating a newsletter document in Google Docs. Then we are updating the document with the newsletter using this node over here. Then we're proceeding to send ourselves the newsletter document URL via email. And then lastly, we're adding the form submission data, the email newsletter, and the newsletter document URL to our spreadsheet using this node over here. Now, when you open our spreadsheet, here you can see we successfully added our topic, target audience, primary objective, the tone, sections, call to action, the email newsletter that we generated using our AI agent, and the email newsletter document URL over here. So we can open this document to preview our newsletter. Then you open Google Docs. Here you can see the subject line and the email body that we generated for one newsletter over here. So this is an incredible newsletter that we generated using our workflow with all these different sections over here. It has an incredible introduction, goes more in depth about our topic, you can see over here, and then in the end it generates an incredible call to action over here. This is incredible. Then we're proceeding to send ourselves the newsletter that we generated using our workflow via email. So when I open my inbox, here you can see the subject line and the email body with all the emails that we're using to send ourselves the newsletter. Link to the newsletter attached to the email. So here's the link to this newsletter that we generated using our workflow over here. We generated this newsletter, sent ourselves the newsletter via email, and then added the newsletter to our spreadsheet over here using this workflow that we created right here in Anytime. So our workflow works perfectly. Thank you for watching. Now, if you'd like me to create this workflow for you or a workflow similar to this one, just click the first link in the description to schedule a call with me. On the call, we'll discuss into details about the workflow that you'd like me to create for you, and then I'll proceed to create the workflow for you. But if you enjoyed this video and you have an AI agent or a workflow in mind that you'd like me to create using Anychan, just comment it down below in the comment section. I read all the comments, and if I land on your comment and I find it intriguing, I'll come back on a future video showing you how to create the entire workflow or AI agent from scratch using Anychan. But for now, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.